Welcome, beautifuls. My name is Hannah. Lovely to have you here. This is my life story. A little bit nervous about it, actually. People are like, how do you not get nervous? And I'm like, I get nervous. I just still do it anyway. That's the difference, right? Just gonna give it a couple minutes. Just gonna see who joins us live. So I'll just give it a bit because I know there's a little bit of a delay. In the meantime, I'm going to share this. Oh, there's some people here. Who's here? Tell me who's here. Say hi. Let me know. Give me some love hearts. Okay. Just gonna share this. Yay, some love hearts. There's people here. Just writing to share this. Hey Jenny! Hey Tommy! Dorothea! Yes, there's those people here. Some love hearts. Let me know you're here. Say hi. Yay, thanks for the love hearts. Just sharing this, and I shall be present with you. Give some time for people to arrive. Hey honey bunny. Bunny's what I call my daughter. So cute. A little bit excited to see her because it's been like a month. Alright, cool bananas. Alright, so, I don't know. I'm like really nervous. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what to say. Well, there's so much that I could say that I'm actually writing a book about it as well. So, obviously there's only so much that I can share in a live stream, right? But I really felt called to share, you know, my story because I'm just getting message after message after message, just like, what about this and what about that? And I'm like, oh, this is like, this is my book. I'm like, I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book. So that's happening soon. So it's kind of a little bit of the, you know, can't tell you yet, but that is something that's happening. And I guess I'm wondering, like, I was like, how am I going to start? Because, yeah, so I've got questions for you guys. What do you want to know? And that's kind of where I'm going to start from. So obviously, like I said, you know, like in a live stream, I can't cover absolutely everything about my life, right? So just, yeah, like, I don't know, ask me something and I will go from there. Yeah, that's the intuitive message that I got, because I'm like, there's so much that I could say, right? So yeah, I'll just wait for some questions to come in of like, where do you want me to start? Like, what's the most pressing thing that you want me to know, or you want to know? How did I first realize my calling? Okay. Awesome. That's a good place to start. Because it was when I was spiritually awakened. So I'm just going to bring this up on my screen properly so I can see the comments. Yep, make sure that's on silent. There we go. Yeah, so, okay. So how did I first realize my calling? Where do I start with that? Okay, I am going to start a little bit back further than that. And obviously, like, this is just a little bit of background to kind of see where and how I was there. So ultimately, I just want to say, for some reason, that's just coming to my mind, that first of all, I want to say two things. One is, any part of my story that I share, I don't want to see comments or questions, or like comments saying, oh, you poor thing, or I'm so sorry for you, or like, if you have that sort of a response, you're totally missing the point of why I felt called to share my life story, of why I want to share my life story. So just notice like your internal response, because what I'm sharing is not about wanting sympathy or like any of that crap. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you're missing the entire point, right? So I just really needed to say that little kind of disclaimer. And if you feel that way, then please, like, you know, either notice that and like find, like, source what the point of what I'm saying is. Otherwise, I'm just literally not the healer for you, and you need to kind of find a different healer. Hey, Rachel. So I just really wanted to say that, okay? Because, yeah, big deal about that. This is not why I'm sharing my life story. I'm not asking for sympathy. I don't want it. Like, you're missing the point, okay? So the other thing that I just wanted to share was that, you know, the whole thing about, okay, awesome. Thanks, Dorothea. So, yeah, the other thing I just want to say briefly is, you know, like with the psychic readings, you know, like, I'm a little bit nervous about stopping that. If you read my post this morning, it's like my mind's going, but my heart's just like, oh yeah, like it's like a no-brainer to stop psychic readings. And I'm like, you know, like this head, heart, but you know, of course I go with the heart and trust that more than anything. So with that, it's, you know, if you know how I work, like I don't even need to use cards to do psychic readings. Like that's just who I am. I'm intuitive. Like, you know, this is who I am. I'm psychic as a being, right? So it's not that I'm ever not doing them again. It's just that you won't be able to book the $97 email reading with me. So, I mean, when you work in one-on-one mentoring, when I'm doing the group coaching, like I'm always using cards. Well, not always, but I'm using them all the time. Like, I've got how many decks of them. People come to my house, see that I'm addicted to them. So we're going to talk about my spiritual addiction in my story here. Hey, Nigel, nice to have you here. Okay. All right. I'm starting. So I just had to say that little disclaimer, and really important about the psychic readings. So if you do want to book a psychic reading with me, you need to do that before the 31st. I won't be taking any more bookings of psychic readings after that. I'm a little bit nervous about where my life's going, but as you'll hear my life story, I kind of like, this is like the story of my life. Like I don't know where it's going. I just trust, right? I know something really big and exciting is coming. I know the things that I'm creating are big and exciting, and I also can feel something else coming that I can't see coming yet, right? All right. So, how did I first realize my calling? As a spiritual light worker, I'm not sure. So I am going to start kind of right a little bit back before my spiritual awakening, so you kind of get the drift, or, you know, the understanding a bit there. As I said, it won't be like full details because it's like a book. I am writing a book for that reason. Okay, so I was born in the bush in Broken Hill. If you were following me around Christmas time, you would see the red dirt out back pictures, and that is where I was born. And then when my parents... yeah, you did, Olivia, you did. You just got it in time. yeah, another week before that closes. So born in Broken Hill, was out on the stations for about 2 to 3 years, and then my family moved into town, and then my parents split up when I was about 5, and Dad moved to Cairns in Queensland, Australia, which is up far north Queensland, a bit further than where I am now, and Mum moved to Perth. And all my mum's side of the family is in Perth, and then my dad was in Cairns, and my nana was in Broken Hill. She's passed away now. And I grew up in Perth, and so I don't really remember spending a school holidays in Perth. It was probably very rare. Because every school holidays, I would jump on a plane and go and see my dad. And I used to love, well, I still love, I love flying and travel that much, that I would say to Dad on the phone, can you please book the longest trip to get there? And I remember at one time, he actually booked, so going from like Perth to Cairns, like it's, you know, a 5-hour flight, so it's quite a long flight. Straight like diagonal across. If you look on the map, you'll see Perth and Australia, Perth and Cairns. Hey, Carrie. And so I'd say to Dad, you know, can you make it go the longest trip? So I remember one time he booked, you know, like Perth to Adelaide, Adelaide to Melbourne, Melbourne to Sydney, Sydney to Brisbane, and Brisbane up to Cairns, right? I remember, you know, I just used to love it. Like, do you imagine how long that would be? Like, I was, I don't know, 6 or 7 or something like that. And yeah, so every school holidays I was spending time with my dad, whether, you know, that was in Cairns, or he'd fly to Broken Hill and would spend time in Broken Hill with my nana, or go back up to the bush or something like that. And, you know, I am so grateful for, you know, all of that, because, you know, like he took me all up the far north Queensland, like up to the Daintree, up to the Great Barrier Reef, you know, camping, like learnt a lot of my bush tucker, well, all my bush tucker skills from my dad, you know, so many things, and in Broken Hill, we'd go out to the station, you know, camp under the stars, you know, like there's so many stars in the outback, like it's in my blood, I love it. And, you know, he taught me how to shoot a rifle, how to skin, you know, kangaroo rabbit. He used to be a fox shooter, rabbit shooter, kangaroo shooter when I was, you know, baby. So, you know, he taught me how to do all that, and, you know, forever grateful about that. And so that was most school holidays, and my mum, all these people are probably freaking out because they're like, what's she going to say about me in my life? It's alright, I'm not naming names. So, unless you want me to, of course. So, yeah, growing up in Perth, Mum remarried. And so my brother was born when we kind of first moved back to Perth, and then my mum remarried, and I've got 2 younger sisters as well. So I'm the eldest of, you know, 3 other siblings. And, yeah, like, you know, everything I'm saying is not out of like, oh, this happened to me and this was fucked and this is, you know, it's not about that. Like I said, you know, like I'm sharing all this. Hey, Teresa, I'm sharing all this because this is what has created me to be where I am now. And it's a huge drive for my purpose, you know, and I'm sharing my story because I want you to be inspired about how you can turn your pain into power, about not being a victim and actually doing something about your life and creating it the way that you want, right? And that means every single aspect of it. So I'm also not ever blaming anybody. I'm just giving this bit of a disclaimer. I'm not blaming anybody. This is just my experience, my feelings, and how I dealt with it, okay? So when I was I remember I was 13, and my girlfriend at school, like one of my best friends, we used to, I don't know how I started it, but you know, I just remember going to school, I'd say to Mum, oh yeah, I'm going to meet like a teacher like early in the morning, like I'd leave at 7:30, school didn't start for an hour, and I'd meet my girlfriend in the bushes and we'd smoke bongs before school. And, you know, like, because our high school was surrounded by a big bushland, so there was lots of stash places and stuff in the school. And that was pretty standard. Smoking cigarettes, I still remember the first time I took a drag of a cigarette in year 8, walking home in the park. I'll never forget it. I was just like, ah, that first, like, drag, but then you kind of get over that and get used to it, you know. So, smoking cigarettes and weed. Hey, Alina. From, yeah, when I was 13. And, you know, I remember, you know, coming home from school and, like, it just being kind of chaos, you know. Like, I had, you know, 3 younger siblings. We would always look after, you know, a big part of what I remember is, you know, looking after two other, like, children the same as, yeah, I don't know how I did it back then. I was, like, I think about it now, I'm like, oh. But yeah, so like I'd get home from school and it was just like the house was just chaos as kids, and just, you know, I'm 12 years older than my younger sister, so there's a big gap. And you know, when you're 13, it's a big deal. And you know, my stepfather at the time, Mum's not married to him anymore, but you know, was quite abusive, you know, and it was just, you know, that was kind of normal. It was high achiever, Cass. I almost just said then that I used to outsmoke the boys. You know, I was one of the boys back in the day. I was in that, you know, group. So yeah, I used to outsmoke the boys in buckets, actually not bongs. So anyway, I just can't believe I used to do that, actually. I haven't actually thought about this sort of depth of it for a while. So anyway, I was more like 17, 18 then, not 13 at that time. But yeah, and I just remember, you know, kind of 13 to, I guess, 16 was a big time for me, in a sense of like, you know, just not getting along with my stepdad. I didn't like him. I still kind of don't, to be honest, but you know, I've worked through a lot of stuff in that. Is it retrograde? Oh, is that why I'm going over my past? Well, that would make sense. Like I've made peace with my past, obviously, but you know, at that time it was very kind of traumatic. And I see that, you know, at that point, like smoking weed every day was my escape. That was how I dealt with my life, you know, like I didn't know any other way to deal with it, you know, like that was just what I did, right? Like I was at school, you know, at high school. So, yeah, and during this time as well, like from 13 to 16, 17, pretty much the whole way through actually, to when I was 21, I was also in relationship after relationship, like long-term relationship after long-term relationship. You know, so lost my virginity when I was 14. And then after that, I was kind of in like long-term relationship for like 2 years. Thanks for the love hearts, guys. And then, you know, like 2 years, you know, like it would be like 2 years, break up, a week break into another relationship for 2 years, you know, like it was solid. And then when I finished high school, being the high achiever, I got ducks for my school. Fuck knows how I did it, but I just did. You know, and I say I got ducks at school, but it's also in a sense of like, I didn't want to go to uni. I didn't, you know, university. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. You know, people like, you know, and this is the part of how did I know, what did you say, Tammy? How did I know my gift, or when did I know this is coming into it, right? So I'm kind of answering Tammy's question, how do I first realize my calling? High school, yeah. This is kind of sorted and exciting. Yeah, my vulnerability, yeah, I'm a bit nervous. I'm fucking nervous actually, sharing all this. So, yeah, and before, I just want to say, I'm giving all these little disclaimers throughout this live stream. Before you have any judgments, before you have any reactions, please, you know, like, listen to the entire story, okay? The entire live stream. Like, you know, I see a lot of people having reactions and, you know, reading something in my blog and having a reaction and not finishing the whole thing. You know, like, own your reactions. It's a big thing, right? Or acknowledge them at least. Okay, so where am I up to? So, okay, so, you know, year 11, year 12, thank you. So year 11, year 12, you know, everyone's like, what are you doing? Gonna, you know, go to TAFE or go to uni or, you know, and I'm like, I don't know, I just want to drive around Australia. Like, that's all I knew. Like, that's what I remember that so clearly. I'm like, I just want to drive around Australia, you know, like, and didn't really think much of it. I'm like, whatever sort of thing. Like, and, you know, and when I said, you know, I got TE, I got non-TE ducks of the school. So doing TE is like HSC. So that's like your, you know, I know in Australia, even states are different. Probably in the world it's different, but you've got to get a certain high school certificate to be able to go to university, right? So I chose the non one of that because I knew I didn't want to go to university. So I got the non-TE ducks. So I got the highest in my school. But I did things that I knew that I did what I wanted to do. Do you know what my chosen subjects were? They were cooking, sewing, and mechanical, and I got straight A's in all of them. I also got A's in English because I loved English. I'm a writer, as you can see. I've always been passionate about writing. Maths and science, meh. But, you know, I did the things that I wanted to do, mechanical, cooking, and sewing, and I excelled in them. So, you know, that's just, I guess, a one kind of example of doing what I wanted to do rather than like, oh, I better go to uni because they want me to. It was just like, no, well, I want to do this and I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to do that. And I know I want to drive around Australia. Like at that point in time, I had no idea. Like I was working in a pet shop, you know, as a part-time job. And then, before I finished, high school, my boss at the time said to me, you know, saw how good a worker I was, because I'm that high achiever and I do everything well, especially when I like doing it. Working in a pet shop, who wouldn't like working in a pet shop? Apart from the fact of picking up poo and cleaning after the animals, which is pretty much all you do in a pet shop job, it is a good, rewarding job working with animals, right? Plus, I had a menagerie at home. if you guys, like my neighbors or anyone who knew me, like I've always had many, many animals, still do today, right? So, you know, my boss at the time said to me, you know, like, would you want to work, you know, full time? So it just kind of like all kind of fell into place. I was doing what I wanted, and it was like an opportunity come up to work full time when I finished high school. I'm like, well, yeah, of course, you know, like, you know, I just, thanks Kelly, I just, you know, did what I wanted to do. I just did what felt right to me, yeah? And then it was about 18 months, I think, or was it... maybe it wasn't that long after high school, actually. Maybe about 6 months after I'd finished high school, because I graduated in 2001, and I must have left Perth in 2002, end of 2002, coming into 2003. So it must have been about mid-year, because, yeah, the dogs, yeah, my writing, and an animal person, yeah. And like all I remember is just, you know, like my family in Perth on my case, like, you know, this may not be their memory of it, but like I said, this is just my experience. This is not, you know, like, you made me do this, like, I'm not saying that. I'm not at all. Like, I'm grateful that all this happened, because I would not be where I am today, I guarantee that. So, you know, but all I remember at the time is, you know, like them saying, so what are you going to do with your life? You know, are you going to go to TAFE or uni? And I'm like, in myself, like, it came out, like, it was a big shock for me, actually, because I'm like, oh, well, I was really happy just working at the pet shop doing my thing, you know, like, that was, I hadn't even thought about it, right? And, so anyway, my boyfriend at the time, I'd said to him, you know, because I was pretty kind of, I guess upset at the time. It came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, well, I don't know what I want to do. And there's more things I want to say. So I'm just going to write it down because it's an integral part of the story, but yeah. So I remember, I clearly remember like it was yesterday as well, me being at my boyfriend's house and said, I think I must have said I can't be with you anymore or something, because I've got to go to TAFE or uni, and I'm not doing it here, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I did say to, you know, my mum and that, I said, well, I'll go to TAFE or uni or something and do something, but I'm going to do it in Cairns with my dad, like, because my dad was still living in Cairns. I was like, well, I'll go to Cairns and do it then, because I don't know, like, I just didn't know. I'm like, well, I'll do that. And I said that to my boyfriend at the time. I said, you know, I must have said I can't be with you or whatever, because I have to leave, you know, I have to go to Cairns to do TAFE or uni or something. I have to do, I honestly didn't know what I was doing. And so he's like, oh, okay, well, I'll come with you. And I was like, what? I was like, I wasn't expecting that. And he's like, well, and we'll drive across. And I'm like, what? And anyway, so we planned, for about another 6 months, so it must have been the middle of June or something. And 6 months later, we left at the beginning of December. I think we decided on the 1st of December we would leave, and we drove across. And we were heading up to Cairns, you know, to go see my dad so I could go to TAFE uni something. But we drove, you know, drove across to Nullarbor. You know, we didn't drive right around Australia. We just kind of did the Eyre Peninsula, came up to Broken Hill, across to Port Macquarie, and then up, you know, the east coast that way. So I haven't actually done the whole of Australia, but it was pretty close from my kind of like in high school going, I don't know, I just want to drive around Australia. Like that it just happened, you know, like it wasn't like, oh, I need to plan this and I need to do this. It was just like, that's all you know, that was my response to things, right? So so we ended up, you know, driving across, really, really loved, you know, I loved that trip, you know, I love road trips, and, yeah, so yeah, your drug of choice is alcohol. Yeah, so, I mean, like, I wasn't really a big drinker, I've never really been a big drinker, but, you know, like, weed every day, you know, from 13 to 21 was very, very clear. Like, you know, it was quite solid, actually, thinking about it. Yeah, and like when I was 17 was the first time I went to, I guess, a rave festival. It was a drum and bass festival. I don't regret any part of any of my past at all, because it literally I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I'm so grateful for my boyfriend at the time when I was 17, getting me a fake ID somehow. I can't even remember how that came about. But got into this, you know, drum and bass festival, you know, went with all his mates, got a limo there. Like, it was a really good experience. Like, I loved it. And I'm so grateful to be introduced to drum and bass, you know, I love that. Yeah, I was a big raver, but that didn't actually come until I got to Queensland. So it was more just drum and bass, and, you know, that was pretty, I think because of him, like, he used to play, I'm sure he still does, play, you know, the vinyl decks and everything, had, you know, UK connections, so drum and bass is big in the UK. And, you know, I love that. And so, yeah, so we drove across, like I said, we were heading up to Cairns. So yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is during this time I was still smoking weed every day, you know, like, my drugs mainly back then were speed. Like, back then, speed was pretty, like, the drug of choice, like speed and pills. And it wasn't until, a couple of years later that, you know, is it ice, like methamphetamines came into the scene. And then, you know, like, I mean, I wasn't really aware because we'd left Perth by then, but apparently that was the drug of choice. And I'm like, oh, okay, where's the speed at? So if you know me, I go a million miles an hour. Like, that's never changed. But, you know, I'm not on speed anymore. It's like coffee, but at the same time, I don't even need drugs these days. So anyway, I'll get more to that in a moment. Okay, so yeah, so that was kind of the thing. We got to the Sunshine Coast, where I am still now today. And like I said, we were heading up to Cairns, but we got to the Sunshine Coast, we started running out of money, and on Thursdays, yeah, I haven't smoked weed since I was 21, like, yeah, and I'll tell you why I don't take drugs anymore, because it was a really big deal, and it's a big why I'm passionate, it is a big why of why I'm passionate about teaching about spirituality, about protecting your energy, in a way of, you know, sealing, you know, repairing your aura, because drugs, you know, like, make you leave your body, and then it's like, well, who's in your body? You know, and yes, there's ceremonies, and yes, you can do ayahuasca, and there's all these things. I'm not saying any of it's bad. This is my personal experience. This is my reasons why, you know, I choose not to. I don't like it. You know, I would rather be clear. I would rather be very aware who's in my body, and that's me. I would rather be very aware of energy so I don't get sick very often. You know, I'd rather be sorting out the issues rather than them waking me up and end up in hospital or whatever, right? Anyway, point of my story, right? So I'm like, this is why I'm passionate about it. No judgment on anyone, of course, but yeah, I've gone through a lot to just go, oh, and I was saying now that the thing that when I stopped when I was 21 was when I had my spiritual awakening, and I'll get to kind of how that happened in a moment, that, you know, like, the more I stayed away from drugs, and, you know, and I stopped alcohol for 2 years at the same time, although I wasn't ever a big drinker, but I stopped everything. The longer I stayed away from it all, the stronger my psychic abilities got. And I'm like, I would rather be psychic than take drugs. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that was a really big motivation. So, you know, which one do you want, right? So you sure mentioned weed a lot. Yeah, well, you know, like I said, like, every single day from 13 to 21, you know, like, as we left Perth, like, one of his mates, you know, our dealer, ultimately, you know, gave me as a gift a wooden carved little pipe thing, you know, like, is a leaving gift. You know, like, I was a big weed smoker. Like, every day after school I would come home, drop my bag, grab my dog, go to my dealer's house, and, you know, I would be one of the boys sitting around smoking bongs until, you know, 10 o'clock at night, and I'd come home and then I'd eat the dinner, and then I'd go, do you know what I mean? Like, it was just a wipe. But it was me escaping from reality at that point in time, yeah? And, you know, when we got to the Sunshine Coast, started running out of money, you know, like, we applied for work. here, and you know, being a kind of small coastal town, you know, going into the government agency like Centrelink here, and the guy's like, you're probably not going to get your government allowance because, you know, you've moved to like the highest unemployment rate place in Australia, so, you know, it's probably not going to happen. And meanwhile, I'm still applying for jobs, obviously, but, you know, did that. And I actually received a job. I got a job within 3 weeks of being on the coast, at an aquarium and pet shop. And I was at that job for 2 years. So I kind of was just like walking back into that Centrelink office to the guy who was just an asshole to me. And I was like, well, I actually got a job, so I don't need your payments, you know. And he's like, anyway, and I loved that job, you know, and I got that job really effortlessly because of my pet shop experience in Perth. So I was at that Perth pet shop for 2 years, and then I came here and got a job within 3 weeks and stayed there for 2 years. And, you know, it was, you know, pets and aquariums, it was birds, like parrots and stuff, and so my knowledge of animals expanded even more, especially in the aquarium, salt water. I learned more about water chemistry than I ever did at school, and I still remember it now because I loved it. I loved learning about the aquarium and, you know, tropical fish and saltwater fish, you know, like my knowledge on that is huge. And, you know, I still have my dream in my massive big mansion house to have like a wall aquarium, you know, of discus, which are my favorite. So, you know, like, anyway, as you can see, I'm like, I love the animals. So anyway, okay, so what happened? Okay, so in that 2 years that I was working at the pet shop, so within 8 months of my boyfriend at the time and I arriving on the Sunshine Coast, we ended up breaking up. Fairly messy, absolutely toxic, you know, just stuff. And I'm not saying it was him, I'm saying it was both of us. It was messy, it was, you know, it takes two to tango. I say this all the time, you know, even domestic violence, all of that, you know, it takes two to tango, you know, like you can't, do you know what I mean? Like, you know, and this might be like, oh, and I'm not saying that domestic violence isn't real, but what I am saying is that if you're not taking the steps to get out of it, because there are protective measures, there's steps you can take, there's all of that you can do, and if you're not doing that, then you are enabling it, right? Not overly, Erin, but down south, so, you know, on the southern area of Australia, more so than here. So anyway, so it was a very messy breakup, and I remember, you know, it was 8 months since I've been here, and, you know, I clearly remember, again, as one of those, you know, remember it like it was yesterday, on the phone to my mum going, you know, everything that was happened, about working with dolphins. Yeah, I'd always thought about that too, actually. Anyway, so I was speaking to mum, and she's like, oh, come home, you know, because I know that's just how she could help me at the time, right? You know, and I'm like, no, you know, and I went, and because we were living together, and then I just started looking for, you know, a place to live for myself, and I didn't have a car. I just had, you know, my full-time job, and I ended up finding, you know, this was, what, nearly 15 years ago, so I was looking in the newspaper, the local newspaper, and I found this little ad for a 2-bedroom apartment at Alexander Headlands, and I just rang, and, you know, and I had to walk there because I didn't have a car, so it was still in the same suburb, but it, you know, I went there, and the lady just happened to be, like, I don't know, maybe she was 60 or something like that, 50 or 60 perhaps, I don't know, around that age, and she just happened to work at the animal refuge home, and so of course we got along like house on fire, and I've like brought all my references. I've got like a plastic bag full of all this paperwork of like references and, you know, things that I could apply for this place, right? And, you know, and I said, I don't have a car, I don't have any furniture, I don't have anything. I said, I've got all these references, and I just remember her, like, you know, sorry, I'm having all these memories. So she was just like looking out the window, you know, because it was up on the hill. So, you know, you walk into this apartment and all you can see is this massive, beautiful, you know, bay, like Alexander Headlands. So if you know the Sunshine Coast, Alexander Headlands is like a big headland, right? And there's all the houses, and you can see the entire bay all the way up to Coolum. And you could just have this massive view, and she's just standing there looking at it. I was like, well, I've got these references. She's like, oh, I don't need them. It's all right, I trust you. And I'm like, and I was just like, oh, like I needed this. And it was so empowering just to, you know, be able to get out of that situation and do it. And, you know, I had to ask people to help me move. Like, you know, it was big, right? Anyway, got myself set up. And it was, you know, 2 years in that house exactly. No, there isn't any accidents, and you know, this is where my spiritual journey kind of really started to kick into gear, I guess. You know, first of all, the apartment, you know, it was old, like it was an old building, but it was, this is going to sound really weird. So the color of the walls in the apartment were like a dark blue. Like it's like you were walking into the ocean. Like this card just sitting here on my desk, like that kind of dark blue is like literally what the color of the walls like. This entire apartment, like anyone who came to my Alexander Headland apartment, the entire walls were blue. And the thing about it, when I first walked in and saw it, I was like, when I grew up, like at home with my mum, with my family, in Perth, I'd painted my bedroom walls that same blue. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, this is like home, right? So it was, you know, all the signs, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, I was working at the pet shop, so I went through quite a few flatmates. As it turns out, I like living on my own, but at the time I was working with, you know, a lot of people. I mean, living, you know, a lot of people came in and out of my life. It was pretty messy at the time when I really think about it. You know, like I met some amazing people at the time. Like I was home, yeah. I don't regret any of it, like I said. And I had that, okay, so working at the pet shop, I met this amazing guy. But what was so amazing about it was, you know, I'm getting his fish and catching his fish and stuff. I was like the pet shop girl, right? And he, like, I overheard him talking with his mate. Like, he was a regular in the shop, you know, and I overheard him talking about raves with his mate for this weekend, and I'm like, what? So we became friends, right? And went to a lot of raves together, a lot of amazing, you know, memories. Like, I love that guy, you know, he's awesome, still to this day. And yes, a lot of good memories there. And then, you know, like, I ended up, I don't know, like, I was a big partier back then, right? So every weekend when there was a rave on, most weekends, like the Brisbane rave scene, like, has actually really died down now. Like, you know, for a while there, I was like, what happened to the rave scene? I was so grateful that I actually got to experience, because it's just not there anymore. And, you know, like not every weekend, but almost like as soon as there was, you know, weekend, you know, a rave on, like I was there. Like that was what it was, right? And in my bedroom at home, like I was the poster stealer girl. So if I saw the rave poster out being advertised, I would steal it and I'd come home and stick it on my wardrobe wall, right? And yeah, like some of the best times of my life were at those raves, and I met some, you know, pretty amazing people. But it was like, you know, that was our crew. We'd do all the raves that came up, you know, stay awake all weekend. You know, I'd call in sick to work on Saturdays so that I could, you know, stay in Brisbane. You know, like it was just hectic when I really think about it. Come to work, you know, and wonder why I crash on Wednesday. You know, it's just like, oh. Anyway, so, you know, and so the cycle continues, basically. But that was my life, you know. I was happy at that time, but when I really think about it, I'm like, wow, you're pretty fucking, you know, not depressed, just the cycles of like my emotions and, you know, like everything on the drugs, like the highs and the lows, like where there was extreme highs and there was extreme lows, right? Yeah, so many amazing people. And the thing about it was, you know, for me, because I didn't have any, you know, family on the East Coast, apart from, you know, Dad, another, what is it, to Cairns up there, another 1,200 Ks or something drive. So, you know, I don't have any family around here still, you know, and yeah, it was like the Brisbane rave scene, you know, you'd see the same people at the raves, you know, like they were like my family, like it felt like family. And yeah, and then what happened after a while? So what, okay, so it got to a point where I ended up meeting, you know, this guy. Wasn't really connected to the race scene, but, you know, at the time in Alexander Headlands, so on the Sunshine Coast here, you know, it'd be like Brisbane Friday, Saturday night, and then it'd be like Sunday Arvo, you know, what do they call it? Sunday Arvo session, down at Mooloolaba. You know, I do love those days. There were some really awesome times, you know, there's a lot of memories coming back that I'd actually forgotten about. Now I'm thinking about it. Anyway, so the point of my story is, you know, that went on for a bit, met some amazing people. Yeah, and I can't even remember how I met this particular guy, but he put me in touch with a lot of people. You know, when I think about how my life then unfolded, I'm like, oh, that was all through him. Like, it just kept unfolding this way. And ended up, you know, being around people that own horses, and, you know, being treated like royalty, going in limos to, you know, VIP horse events. Like, it was just like, you know, like next level, of course, back then. And yeah, it got to a point. So, you know, like that relationship, you know, that the man that I met, that I said that, you know, kind of unfolded a lot of relationships after that, like just connections. That was actually a really messy ending as well. Like, you know, when somebody broke up with me, I took it like it was death, right? Because, you know, and this is like relationship after relationship. Like, this was the story of my life, you know, it was relationship after relationship after relationship. And I remember after that breakup with him, I then, well, it was interesting because at that time, you know, there was, this is, with him, he's like, oh, my friends are coming up from Melbourne, they've got nowhere to stay. And I'm like, oh, okay. So at one point in my 2-bedroom unit, this is going to sound absolutely intense, right? It was me and my boyfriend, so me and him at the time. And then it was, so it was me and him, then his mate, you know, so my flatmate was in the next bedroom, so the 2 bedrooms are full, and then his mates come up from Melbourne and they needed somewhere to stay, so they were sleeping on my couch. So there's me and 4 dudes in this 2-bedroom unit. I think I ended up getting another massive saltwater fish tank, like a 3x2 saltwater fish tank. We had like, the room was like full of fish tanks. The guy that came up from Melbourne had a dog and a snake. I had my 5 rats, I think, or I had 3 rats at that time, Splinter, Melbourne and Fitzy. And then I also had my green Alexandrian parrot. So it was just like, can you just imagine? Like, it was crazy, right? And we're all smoking weed and, you know, and there were, some of them were chefs. So it was just like a full, you know, that sort of a lifestyle. Unbelievable organizing type of angel. More like the, like, I don't know if people pleaser is the word. It was the, I don't know, maybe it was, I don't know. There was something about it, but I mean, when he broke up with me, kind of like everything, like that was like a big turning point. Like, it was like death. Yeah, it was really like death. And in that sense, like after that point, you know, like kind of they all, like I was like, everybody get out. And but it started, right? This is the first bit of my spiritual awakening. So it was before the end of the breakup, yeah, because something started shifting in me. I don't know how, what, it was just what happened, yeah. Yeah, I'm not anymore Dorothea after, you know, like in the past 3 months. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I was like that. But anyway, that's another story. So yeah, like, but just before it got really messy in that breakup, I'd had a book given to me when I was 18. I should have brought it in. Yeah, I mean, this was 12 years ago, no, 15 years ago now, more even, because I've been on the Sunshine Coast for 15 years now, Corey, so it was quite a while ago. And yeah, like, so I got given a book when I was 18, and it was a Feng Shui book, How to Feng Shui Your Home or something. And of course, like, I hadn't read it, like, but you know, when I left Perth, I packed up everything that I ever owned in Perth into boxes. And, you know, when I got to the Sunshine Coast, Mum, you know, shipped them over. Not really carried, didn't sense the shift before the breakup. You know, it was just, I don't know. Well, something was going on, but I think, and I don't know, maybe I'd had enough of 4 guys in my house with a zillion animals and it just being feral. Or I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I just kind of had enough probably. And, you know, I had a feeling that, you know, my partner at the time was still in love with his ex, and then I found out truth about that, and that's probably where it all started unfolding, actually. But before it got to that point, what I'm saying is about the Feng Shui book, is for some reason I picked it up and I started reading it. And I was like, oh, wow. And I put into place what it said, right? So, you know, like with 4 men living in my house, you know, there was just like a zillion shoes and, you know, and they're all lined up at the door, and Feng Shui's like, don't have your shoes lined up at the door, you know, and all this sort of stuff, you know, in the hallway of the doorway sort of thing. And, you know, and anyway, I Feng Shui'd my house, you know, as much as I could, you know, just with certain placements of objects in certain you know, areas and blah, blah. Like, I'm no professional, right? But I followed what the book said, yeah? And I know that that was really the turning point of everything starting to unravel and change. So after our breakup and, you know, they moved out, very messily and all that sort of jazz. But anyway, I came home one day to him packing up his stuff and left, and I was, you know, that's like the biggest abandonment ever, and that's what it was for me. And anyway, then I flew home to Perth for, you know, just visit my family for 2 weeks, and Big Day Out, so the festival Big Day Out was on in Perth, and I went to Big Day Out by myself. Well, actually I didn't go by myself. I went with a group of people, and then as soon as I got there, I'm like, why am I hanging around these people? And so I, you know, just kind of differed off from the crowd and just went on my own little journey, as I do. And ended up at Big Day Out bumping into a guy who I used to work with when I was 14, you know, for my own, like, you know, my first ever job was working at, you know, well, it was called Red Rooster, so it was like a chicken and chips shop, right? And, you know, we used to work together, and I used to like him, but I was in a relationship, and I'm sure that he liked me too, and he was always in a relationship. So, you know, nothing ever happened between us, right? But then when we bumped into each other at Big Day Out, you know, how many people were at those festivals? I think it was like, what, 10,000 or more, like at a Big Day Out, at big festivals, right? And we're like, oh my God, like, and he'd just broken up with his ex recently, and he was about to leave to go to the UK to, you know, start a new life, basically. And so anyway, from then, you know, we kept in touch, and he came and saw me, you know, in Queensland before he then went, you know, travelled into the UK. And so because of that, I was like, right, yeah, cool, I'm going to go with him. So came back to the sunny coast, and I was like, right, I need to earn money, get a job. Oh, because by this time I'd quit the pet shop because, you know, there was a bit of shit that I thought wasn't right, which when I look back, I'm like, wow, I was going to get supervisor position. But, you know, in my own ego stuff or whatever was going on at the time, I'm like, I don't fucking need to do with that bullshit. Anyway, that's one other story. It was me, not them, at the end of the day. So yeah, and so I'd quit there already, so, you know, I was jobless basically, and that's when, you know, I met this guy, and I was like, oh my God, it's meant to be, because, you know, what are the chances of like running into him at Big Day Out and blah blah. So when he came over here, you know, spent time, and then he went off, I'm like, right, I need to get a job, I need to earn money fast. And obviously I'm looking in the papers and all that sort of thing. Now, please hold your judgments back and let me finish. So I ended up getting a job in a strip club, and I only took the job because I wasn't, like, you weren't allowed to take your G-string off, and they weren't allowed to touch you. That was the only reason I said yes, okay? So if there was anything more than that, I wouldn't have done that sort of a job. But they weren't allowed to touch me, and I had to keep my G-string on, and I'm like, I can do that. And as it turns out, high achiever me was like the top club earner. Now, I was only in that job for 10 weeks, right? 2.5 months from start to end. And during that time, that's when I had my spiritual awakening. So, okay, so my boyfriend at the time had gone overseas, and I'm like, right, yeah. And the only reason I had that, like, got that job was because I'm like, I can make a lot of money, and then I can get out of here. So I took the job, and during that time, I don't know how many weeks it was into the, you know, time, maybe it wasn't that long actually, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks. You know, he'd gone overseas, all my abandonment issues and my jealousy issues got out of hand, you know, like no trust basically in the relationship. And, you know, so he broke up with me. And so I'm like, what is going on with my life? I'm working in a strip club. Like, it was just like, I'm like it was rock bottom. And at that time, I was smoking a lot of crack, you know. The people that, you know, got around, you know, I was hanging around, which, you know, I love them. I love those people, you know, they're really good people. You know, but we were all on it, at the time, because, you know, what ended up happening is that apartment where I was living at, my drug dealer was across the road. That I kind of rewind a little bit. You know, I was like, I bet they're a drug dealer. Like, I just knew, right? Because it was like car in, car out, car in. And I'm like, you know, so I just went across and I'm like, you know, asked them. It was pretty funny, actually. I've got to tell this part of the story. I'm kind of rewinding a bit, because when I first, you know, first got to that apartment, like, my ex was helping me, you know, for a bit, or we'd become friends or something was going on. But at that time, you know, he had met the guy across the road, like, and knew his name, like, and just said he met him, or like, you know, that was it at that time though. And kind of, you know, fast forward a year or something, I'm like, I bet that they're drug dealer. And anyway, so I went across the road and one of the guys is out the front and I'm like, oh, is, you know, such and such home? Because I knew that was his name. And he's like, oh yeah, he's inside, you know. And I was like, oh, hi. Like, and it, like, you know, and I took my flatmate's dog at the time, and he had a bandana around his neck. Like, the dog just didn't have a collar, but that was the bandana. And he, you know, was looking around, like, the dog was walking around. And, like, Libra, well, I'm a Virgo, so close to the Libra. He, yeah, like, the guy was a little bit shocked. He's like, oh, yeah, just write your name and number down, you know, and I'll, like, be in touch, right? And so I wrote it down. I'm like, oh, yeah, no worries, and come out. Anyway, it turns out that, you know, they just had a delivery. They were like, who the hell is this, you know, chick, you know, across the, you know, because I was living across the road. They thought I was a detective, and the dog had a camera, like, all this paranoia shit. But anyway, so, long story short, fast forward, you know, like, at that time, you know, by the time I was working in the strip club and, you know, smoking so much crack, and then, you know, my partner broke up with me and he was overseas, it was just like, what am I doing in this, like, you know, like, it was rock bottom, right? It was literally rock bottom. And I went next door to my neighbor because she was older and I kind of knew she was into this spiritual stuff, you know, and I said to her, I'm like, I need your friend to give me a reading. Like, I need a reading. I need something. And she's like, oh, here's a deck of cards. Do it yourself. And I'm like, what? And I took the deck of cards, and it was the Mermaids and Dolphins cards by Doreen Virtue. So these ones, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went home and read the little book and did the cards, and it was amazing. And I'm like, oh, and I like gave her back her deck of cards, went and bought my own. And then, of course, working in the strip club, there's, you know, you've got to make conversation. So I was making conversation, and then this guy said to me, he's like, oh, I've got a book that you might want to read. And I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. It's like, you know, and I'm blah, blah, blah. And then he brought it in, and I almost fell over because it was the same author as the cards. And I didn't tell him, you know, what the cards were. I just told him. And he let me borrow the book. It was called The Lightworker's Way by Doreen Virtue. And I was crying the entire time I read that book. It was like I was reading my life story. And that was when everything started to change. I was earning a lot of money in that strip club, like I said, and I remember going to the spiritual shop one day and I bought every single book that, you know, Doreen mentioned in her Lightworker's Way, the Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, you know, heaps of cards. I bought, you know, an angel statue, you know, like I just, you know, I was earning lots of money. I'm like, yep, this, and this. I think I spent like nearly $1,200 on this stuff, right? And it was from that moment that things started to change. I think it was probably about 2 weeks after that. I'm like, you know what? I don't even need to take this stuff anymore. Like the smoking ice every day. I was just like, I don't need this. And I remember it was like another 2 weeks working at that strip club, and I'd stopped, you know, smoking ice. And I was just like alive and bubbly, and everyone's like, what are you on? And I'm like, I'm not on anything. And they didn't believe me. And I'm like, whatever. And then after 2 weeks, I'm like, I don't need to be here anymore. Like, I don't need to work at this job. Like, and I left. And the next 6 months was like the hugest growth in my spiritual journey ever. Like was it 2 or 3 months later, I turned 21. So it was at 21, like just before I turned 21, I had this, spiritual awakening. And I remember, so I wasn't working at the time, and I was just, heavily in this spiritual stuff. And I remember being on the phone to a friend. I was flicking through a spiritual magazine, like, a directory type thing. And there was an ad in there, and it said Lightworker Practitioner Training and the phone number. And I was like, flicking through, and then I'm like, I gotta go. And I like flicked back through the, magazine. I'm like, I've got to call this number. I've got to go. And so I got off the phone and I called this number. And that's when everything changed. I ended up taking the Lightworker Practitioner Training it was a year-long course, and in that time was like the biggest, the Lightworker Practitioner Training is what got me off drugs. It was a 12-month training, so like from like, I don't know, must have been July or August to, July or August, so it was a year long. During that time, I moved to Brisbane. I stopped taking drugs, and when I moved to Brisbane, I started, like, I got a job down there, and then I was traveling, back to the coast to go Lightworker Practitioner Training. It was weekly at that time, I think. And then, I was working in the city at a menswear shop. So, like suits, actually, like the Hugo Boss suits, and, the really high class stuff, of course. Yeah, it actually wasn't a really cool thing back, it was cool back then, but it was a coping mechanism. That's all it was. That's all addictions are coping mechanisms, right? And, the reason and what pulled me off drugs was the Lightworker Practitioner Training, because I learnt, through the Lightworker Practitioner Training, what speed actually does to your body, to your spiritual aura, and we went through quite a lot of different drugs. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm learning about this. Like, do you know what I mean? And it was just such a huge awakening for me that, it was like, as I was reading what, the methamphetamine, what the speed, what the, weed did to my actual aura, to my spiritual body, as, when people take this, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it was so strong, and I literally didn't do it anymore. When I moved to Brisbane, that was 2006, and I started working in the menswear store. And I remember it clearly, May 2006 was the last time I had drugs, and I was seeing this guy, and we ended up going to some ball of his or something, like a university ball thing, and he, he had cocaine and he didn't tell me, and he had it, and he didn't give me any, and I got really I was like left out. I'm like, why wouldn't you give me any? Do you know what I mean? But he just thought I wasn't into that stuff. And like it was a big, things. I ended up having some, and then I was just like kind of in this environment where I was just like, this is fucked. Like I don't want to do this shit anymore. I broke up with him. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it was just like, and I think because of the part of, just knowing what the drugs were actually doing to my system, to my aura, to my spiritual awareness, my psychic abilities had increased dramatically doing Lightworker Practitioner Training, right? Like, exponentially. And then when I stopped drugs, it even got even higher, right? And that's why I'm like, I dabbled a little bit, but that May 2006 was the last time I did. I'm like, I don't want this around me anymore. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want people around me who do it anymore. And, as all my, kind of raver friends and people who I used to go to festivals with, and, people who I used to hang out with at that time, really looked at me, and I'm pretty sure they still do today, actually. Like, I'm crazy because of the shit that I do, because I talk about, because of all this. I lost like all my friends back then, pretty much, and it was a very kind of lonely time, but at the same time, I wasn't lonely. I wasn't. Now, I just want to share that when I got off drugs, food became my addiction, and I did put on, because in that time, I'd stopped smoking cigarettes. So I stopped smoking cigarettes when I was, I think, 19. The doctor said, if you don't stop, you're going to get cancer, which, I had, like the ovary stuff, like got pap smears and the tests were high and shit. And anyway, I know it's more than that now, but, I'm grateful for her saying that, because it made me quit smoking cigarettes. And then, you know, by the time, you know, got to this when I was 21, moved to Brisbane, and I was just like, I don't want, you know, that. I did quit smoking, quit taking drugs, but then the food became that choice because I didn't actually get to the core of, you know, what that was. Now, the Lightwork Practitioner training shifted so much stuff out, and I wouldn't be where I am today without the Lightwork Practitioner training, but there was still, you know, like, it's very easy to stop an addiction and go to another addiction, whether it's, you know, healthy or not, right? An addiction's an addiction. Yeah, I didn't actually work with animals again. So, you know, I was working in Brisbane, and I, you know, was I was working in the city at the menswear store, and I was there for 18 months. I did really love that job at the time. I'd catch the bus into the city. There was a lot of personal growth that went on when I lived in Brisbane by myself. And I just want to share too a little bit of this sort of, you know, synchronicities bits, is that when I first got to the Sunshine Coast, we lived in, like, you know, at the time with my boyfriend, lived in, like, first place I lived in, second place I lived in, third place I lived in for 2 years by myself. When I first moved to Brisbane, like I'm talking about now, moved to a place, wasn't there for long, moved to another place, wasn't there for long, moved to another place, was there for 2 years. And then, you know, things started, you know, shifting, changing. I was, you know, attending seminars, I was attending third eye courses, you know, like anything spiritual I get my hands on, I was there. And during that time working in Brisbane at that shop, I did so much shadow work. It was ridiculous. When I think about it, you know, like, just because it was just so, you know, it was what I was learning about in the Lightworker Practitioner training. And, you know, I was just like going on my morning walks, doing shadow integrations of customers that had come in and had had a, you know, reaction or not to them. I was integrating them. Like, it was just like, it was constant, like all the time. That's what I was doing, right? And, from the tools that I learnt. And so it sure is, Rachel. You send me a message about that if you like. So yeah, and with that, it's, you know, kind of, you know, just as things change and evolve. What is it? I met a guy, funnily enough, at the Third Eye, you know, course, and he lived at the Gold Coast, which is an hour south of Brisbane. And, you know, after meeting him, I was like, oh, okay, let's move to Brisbane. I mean, move to the Gold Coast to be with him. And of course, like, you know, we broke up. And as I was moving to the Gold Coast, like, again, what happened again was, you know, like 1, 2, 3, I was there for 2 years, like the moving thing. I don't know what's with that, but that's what happened. I don't know what's with that. So I moved, and then I stayed there for 2 years. So there is a lot of 2-year periods, yeah, definitely. And this is an important thing that I'm sharing here, of where I am now today. And it is that point where, so as I was moving, like literally moving my furniture and my belongings from Brisbane to the Gold Coast, it was the last drive, like the last drive of all my belongings stuff. I was like, yep, cool, like that's it now, and drove to the Gold Coast. As I was driving, a little bit of a rewind, I didn't tell you guys this bit. So I am a car lover at heart, a V8 lover at heart. I love my V8s. I love, you know, a loud, rumbly, good sounding V8. Like, there's V8s and then there's good sounding V8s, and I notice them. And, you know, all through high school I used to watch the V8s every weekend. You know, like, I love them. And so cars are really big, and I know that's from my dad, having me under the bonnet, you know, of the V8 when I was 2, but, you know, whatevers. I love it. And so then when I was driving, like, I was in Brisbane, so I was still in the city, and I'm driving, and I heard this V8, and I noticed, I was like, oh, that's a good sounding V8, you know, like, I noticed them, right? And then I'm still driving, you know, didn't think much of it. It was just like, but it actually had trumpets out the bonnet, and it was, you know, this was like, that's a nice V8. And then, so I'm driving to the Gold Coast still, so it's an hour drive, and I'm still driving, so like half an hour into the drive, so halfway there, on the highway next to me, it was like, oh my God, there's that car again, you know? I'm like, what are the chances of that? And I'm like, hey dude, I love your car. Like, I don't know, that's what I did. Anyway, so I pull over at Servo. He just follows me out as well. Apparently he needed fuel, not. But anyway, we exchanged numbers, and anyway, that person today is Daya's father. And, you know, so long story short, you know, we had a pretty tumultuous relationship, you know, for 9 months, and then I fell pregnant with my daughter. And, you know, I got a domestic violence order when I was pregnant, you know, through the advice of, you know, people around me at the time. And, you know, like I said, I wouldn't change a thing, right? And he never hit me. It was all emotional, you know, emotional manipulation stuff. So it was never, you know, physical, but, you know, we all know the story of it. So, you know, the scenario of DV. So, you know, and in that time, you know, it was like the hardest time of my life. But I had made a choice to keep Adea, and I'm so grateful for that choice now. And I have spoken to her about this, because I'm totally honest about everything with her. And, you know, there is a big part of me, you know, that wants to do like a course on children, or how to help children, you know, how to protect them when they go to their other parents or people, or, you know, like energy and stuff, because it's, you know, a big passion of mine. Plus the fact I've never lied to her. So, yeah, because I was just going to say, because one of the, you know, things about being very in tune, in alignment, psychic, you know, clear is honesty. Yeah, like you lie and then a brick comes on. You lie and then a brick comes on. And you lie and then a brick comes on, right? And so, yeah, it's just like in that sense of, anyway, so point of my story is, you know, like I learned honesty in Lightwork Practitioner training in 2005, right? So I've been following these principles. You can see on my website, realityawareness.com, about Hannah. You know, these are the principles I live by. They're from the Lightwork Practitioner training, and I've been doing them since 2005 when I learnt about them. Maybe, you know, not as best as I could, but I mean, like, these are what the basis of my values make up, right? So, because I'm not perfect and nobody is, but I don't lie. Like, I can't lie. That's just something, like, if I lie, I'm like, oh, I need to tell them the truth straight away. And I'm like, I just lied to you and I can't lie. You know what I mean? And that's why I sense, you know, things so clearly, because I'm very clear in that regard. Anyway, long story short is, you know, I ended up having Adea. And then 3 months after I had her, because I did get back with her father for a bit, and then 3 months I was just like, oh no, this isn't gonna work, or this isn't right, or whatever I thought to myself at the time, and so made changes. So we broke up again then, and we've been co-parenting ever since. The first couple of years were pretty hard, living on the east coast of Australia without any family around. Yes, that was my choice. Yes, I decided to stay here. I didn't want to move back to Perth for whatever reason. I stayed on the coast and I did it. And you know, very grateful to, you know, her dad, because, you know, without him supporting me, you know, like in a sense of like, you know, he is a good dad. He's very, very active, you know, in her relationship. Like, she's in New Zealand for a month right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, he moved back to New Zealand and he, you know, has her for a month at a time now. So, do you know what I mean? Like, the first few years were really rough. Like, we've even had this conversation together now, like, you know, not too long ago, or, I don't know, a year ago or more. You know, he actually said, he's like, you know, the first few years were rough, but it's good we've got this relationship now and we can talk about things. And, you know, and I'm like, yes, yes, I do agree. So how old was she when you first talked to her about DV? Well, right from the start, like, in a sense of, you know, and I'm like, oh, this is domestic violence, this is bad. Like, that's not what I said, you know. I'm like, okay, somebody is lying here, honey, okay? You know, like, I want to keep you safe, you know. It's not like, your dad's bad and he's an asshole and he's this. Like, you don't say that to your kids. You just don't, right? You do not put the other parent down about, you know, to your child. It's like the worst thing you can do. Like, I copped it. I don't want her to cop that. She's copped enough, right? Just in general life. I don't want her having my experience of her dad onto her as well. Like, can you imagine the kids carrying that sort of energy around? Like, it's just not on, right? You know, you talk about kids being crazy and not sleeping and going berserko and all. It's just like, well, when was the last time you cleared their energy? Especially if you're going through a rough period with your ex, right? Or even not with your ex. When was the last time you taught your children how to clear their energy? When was the last time you know, taught your children that they've got their angels and guides right there with them, you know? Like, if you don't do that stuff, you need to be doing that stuff. I'm obviously talking about it needs to come out. It's really, really important, you know? So, you know, when you said, you know, when did I talk to her about DV? Well, I never really said that that's what it was to her. I just said that, you know, this is, you know, it's nasty. I don't want you around. I want to keep you safe. You know, that's why I'm going to court. That's why we're doing these things right now, honey. You know, it's not nice. I don't like it. It's hurting me. You know, it's hurting my feelings too. And I'm doing something about it because I want to keep you safe. That's all I kept repeating to her. So, you know, and at the same time, it's like, you know, we don't lie to each other because I need to keep you safe. You can't come home and tell me, you know, Dad said, don't tell your mum. I can't keep you safe when that happens, right? So, you know, it's just like, what sort of relationship do you have with your children? It's not like, you know, I tell her everything in adult terms. No, I talk to her in child terms so she understands, because kids feel the energy anyway. So when you know, when they ask you a question and you lie about it, they get confused in what they're feeling to be true because they're so switched on, right? And then because they look up to you and trust you, they push down and they take your word for it. And then we have kids like turn into adults like me or us, right? That are going through all this personal development stuff to unpack all this stuff. So we trust our intuition. So when we can keep our kids connected to their truth from the start, they won't have as much unpacking to do, right? Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect as a mother, you know, like I do my best, but nobody is perfect. I still lose my shit sometimes if I'm stressed out, right? Everybody does. Even her dad does, and I do. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's perfect, but we do our best. And it's just not about blaming the other parent, you know? Like, it's that thing, you know, if she's upset and, you know, something's happened, I'm like, well, they must be really stressed out, honey, you know, like, it's not nice and it's not right, but, you know, I'm not like, oh, that was so bad and they shouldn't have done that to you and we need to go and sort this out. Like, it's not that. It's not that at all, right? Because what are you teaching her? What are you teaching a child growing up in the world, right? Everybody is human. Everybody, like, loses their shit every now and again, especially when they're under stress, right? Especially when they're under stress, when they're under-resourced, when they're under whatever. Like, that's what happens. It's human nature, right? It's not that it's acceptable, but it's not that they're a bad person because they've just had a really stressful day at work or something, right? And that's why it's about teaching your kids the reality. Well, they're really stressed. This isn't right that they did that to you, but we need to do something. Okay, have we cleared your energy? You know, like, do we need to go outside and, like, allow the sun to dissolve any darkness, right? So it's really important. It's a big part of, you know, being spiritually clear and intuitive and, you know, having your kids grow up with those resources to be able to do that too. So any kind of, you know, schoolyard bullies, if you send your kids to school, it's like, what sort of spiritual resources do you have by their side? Like, do you teach them that they've got, you know, a tiger or a lion or an elephant that they can walk beside them, you know, to have that relationship spiritually with them, to protect them, right? Because the reality is, and a question that I got sent to me was, you know, was I scared of leaving Adaya with somebody? Like, yeah, I was in the start. She didn't go to daycare or anything like that because I didn't have family around, so I was full-time with her until 2.5 years of age, and then I put her into daycare for a day, and then by the time she was 5, that increased to 4 days a week. It's kind of another story how all that happened, but at the time it felt right. And then because that daycare was kind of going to school, we just kind of went with the thing. But even when I had the applications, I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, you know. And like at school, I'm like, you sure you want to go to school? And she's like, yeah, it's fun. And then the real work started, and she's like, do I have to go back? And I'm like, no, let's go. Because when she was a newborn, I actually went to the unschooling conference with Dana Martin, and it was like a 4-day event where all speakers from around the world actually came to the Gold Coast, and you could listen to all these. And I made Adaya's dad come at that time. Adaya was 18 months old. He came, and so it actually came out of a strip club to the light work. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. 100%. The darkest parts bring the most light in, right? So Adaya's dad came to that conference, and after a day of listening to speakers, like I remember we went out to dinner, you know, so we're still friends, you know, like we got along. This is what I mean, like, you know, around, you know, it was still a bit tricky at times in the early days, but, you know, these days it's good. Still have our hiccups, but I mean, what relationship doesn't, especially a long-term one, right? It's just that we know how to handle each other a bit better now. We're just like, okay, did you have a bad day at work or something? Rather than like, oh my God, what the fuck are you doing to me, right? It's not like that anymore. Because it's about taking responsibility and seeing what's going on for that person, right? Rather than blaming them for yelling at you. Like, you know, it's not acceptable, like I'm saying, right? So yeah, so it was nice that he got that perspective from the speakers, so it wasn't just me saying, we're going to do it this way, because we went to dinner. I remember driving in the car that night, and he said, well, I don't really understand it, but I can see how it would benefit our daughter. And he, movie, TV, I can feel that coming, because you're the second person that said about screen stuff. Well, actually the third, someone else said to me, are you going on TV? It's coming, so I can feel these changes, and I can't see what's coming, I can feel it, and I'm just trusting, right? So I moved up to Sunshine Coast when Adea was almost 12 months old. I actually left the coast without him knowing at the time, so it was really, really hard for him, obviously. And, you know, we went to court, tried to make me move back, all that jazz. Like, it's been heavy, right? It's big, okay? But it was, you know, the right choice for me at the time. You know, if I knew better at the time, I might have done better, blah, 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 the same story. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't regret any of it. So the same thing again, you know, when Adea and I moved up to the coast again, it was like one place, two place, and then I moved here. And I've actually been in this place for 6 years now. And I also know that come up that 2-year period, I was like ready to move, right? I was ready to move. I'm like, okay, is that 2-year cycle thing? And I stayed here, and I broke a lot of patterns. I broke so many patterns. Yeah, that's why I'm writing a book, because there's just so many intricate, you know, little synchronicity stories about what I broke, what happened, how I shifted, you know, like all this stuff. Breaking that moving cycle was big, right? It's very base chakras. Like, I was moving every 2 years for like 10 years at that point. You know, ever since I was 18 to 28, I moved house every 2 years, right? So it was really significant to be here and stay grounded here for now 6 years. And, you know, I think it was nearly 2 years ago that I was like moving house, and I wanted to move and, you know, like get a nice yoga space and teach yoga from home and all that sort of thing. And it didn't go through. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just supposed to build online. Let me just build online, and then I'll focus about that later, because I'm very clear about the lifestyle that I want to live. And, you know, and I'm very passionate about helping people. Now, a big reason why I've stopped doing psychic readings is because I do want to write my book, and I want to do, you know, I'm ready to work with people who are ready to shift immediately. So, you do the moving thing too, yeah. Oh, school doesn't feel right for you either. Yeah, you got to trust yourself there. It hasn't been easy at all. Like, the not getting a break thing is not easy. It's like when she started going to New Zealand now for, what's it, nearly 2 years, the overseas trips have started, which is a big lot of trust, you know. And when you said, you know, talked about TV, like, scared of leaving her with anyone. So, you know, in that point, it was like, I had to let go of my control issues. I had to let go of my trust, like, you know, like not trusting, in a simple fact that, you know, he is her father, and, you know, from a, you know, a spiritual perspective, you know, like there's a spiritual belief system out there that says that, you know, we come in and we choose our parents to learn certain things, and she has, you know, chosen him as a father at the end of the day. And, you know, it's her journey too. And the thing as a mother is that I can do everything in my power to protect my children or my child. You know, like, I've got the court orders, I did what I've had to do, and because I've done everything I had to do, I have to leave the rest up to God. I send her over there in complete trust, and yes, we've got a good relationship now, of course. You know, like 10 years ago, this probably wouldn't be happening, but, you know, like, he moved out of the country, like, he didn't want to go, but he said, you know, if I go, will you be okay? And I'm like, well, of course, you know, like, it was still hard at the time. So obviously the arrangements, you know, went every second weekend, then it changed, and, you know, it's been a lot of transitions. But it is something where, you know, like, I mean, what child, you know, at, you know, what, she's been going for nearly 2 years, 7, 8 years old, flies to see her dad every 6 weeks overseas, you know, like, spends a month with her dad and then comes back, you know, like, what, you know, it's like, this is her life, and it's pretty amazing, actually, and it's only going to get better and better. So it's like, you know, do we hold on to fear, or do we actually look at the bigger picture and go, well, what are the opportunities in this, you know? And the thing is, you know, when you hand your child over in trust, well, have you done everything in your power to protect them at that point in time? If you have, and if something happens, well, then you know, of course it's going to still be sad and like, you know, all that, but you won't have any guilt because you did everything you could, right? And that's where, you know, I was ages ago with it all. So I'm a rat. Funny enough, I love rats. So yeah, so just that kind of answers that question. But the whole thing about as well, Tammy, when you're saying how I came into my inner powers, you know, my spiritual awakening was the big, you know, part of it. And then May 2006 was the last time I got off I had drugs, and I got off the drugs, and I stopped alcohol for 2 years at that time too. After 2 years, like, it was really, and the thing I'm talking about, control and that sort of thing, like controlling what my daughter eats, controlling this, controlling that, I had to let go of my control issues, right? In a sense that May 2006 to 2008, so it was like 2008. Yeah, it was 2009. Yeah, it was early 2008 that she, that I decided, well, you know, just through all these experiences with people I was with and what have you, I was like, oh, maybe a glass of wine isn't bad, right? Because I did go right up the other extreme. I'm like, drugs are bad and you shouldn't be taking them, and alcohol is bad. You know, like, I went into really extreme modes, and you know, it's kind of why I flicked into food, you know, and I put on 10 kilos and, you know, all of that sort of thing. Like, you know, I did flick from addiction to addiction. And then when I fell pregnant with my daughter, I was grateful that I'd stopped taking drugs, you know, 2 years beforehand. I was like, you know, out of that scene. I was very grateful for that. And, you know, like, I kind of became even more, I guess, stricter, but I didn't know it at the time. You know, I went full organic. I was like, you know, really anti-chemicals, like, went into the extreme of the whole, I guess, spiritual bypassing, spiritual ego stuff, you know, and that's why I can talk about it, because I'm like, I've been there, and I don't like that. There's no heart to it as well. It's like this way or the highway. It's very black and white. It's very hurtful. You know, I lost a lot of friends again, you know, in that section of time. And then having Adaya, you know, I was very, like, strict with what she ate. But then when she started going to her dad's at, it was probably about, I think it must have been two and a half or something, that she started having like a night sleepovers and stuff, and he'd send me a photo of her eating a Magnum ice cream or something. I was like, no, like, you know, and then she started having Maccas with him and stuff, you know, and in the end, I had to let it go. I had to let it go. I had to let go of controlling what she ate. You know, like, I always cooked her good food, you know, at home, but when she went to her dad's, it was out of my control. I could tell him what I wanted her to eat as much as, but at the end of the day, it's his time with her. It's his responsibility to feed her too. And whatever he chooses to feed her is out of my control. And it was a really big shift. Like, that point in time about the food was a big wake up for me, and a big shift in, like, well, I don't have any control over anything. And at the end of the day, what spiritual wound really shifted in that is that, you know, it was my God wound. You know, when I really did the spiritual work around letting that go, it was my God wound in, you know, not being able to be in control, not having control of, like, anything in my life. And learning to be okay with that God was in control. Now, I talk about God, you know, I used to be really, I'm not religious, but, you know, God for me, you know, I was never comfortable using the word God, especially when I had my spiritual awakening. You know, like, I was just like, I can't, it was universe, spirit, energy, angels, you know, but to me, they're all the same. You know, and that's the thing, like, we are not in control of anything. We can create our reality, we can choose what we want to feel, but at the end of the day, everything really is out of our control. But it's not that we just sit back and go, oh, well, we don't have control over anything, so, you know, fuck it all. It's like, you know, you choose how you want to feel. Like, I choose how I want to feel when I wake up, choose how I want to feel when I, you know, turn up to speak to you guys, you know, I choose how I want to sleep, I choose, you know, I choose everything, right? So the God wound, yeah, so it was a really big wake up. Be hard to describe, actually, but it was at a point where, you know, I was so frustrated that he fed her this crappy food, you know, like, can't you see it's full of chemicals? And, you know, like it was excessive, right? And it was just me not being in control. Yeah, I can't even remember how it dropped in, but I remember receiving a phone call and I had to pull over on the side of the highway. It was this profound. Like, I remember it like it was yesterday. And it was, whatever the conversation was, it was like, I was like, oh, God's in control. Or like it was, and what happened, it was like, this is really hard to describe. Like where, you know, where our chakras are, so the crown at the top and then it comes all the way down through, like that energy flow, like when the crown opens and then the energy flow comes all the way through your chakras, like through all of them down to your base, and then it curves back around, like it's a big energy flow, right? And then it comes, you know, the base chakra is flowing too. And all your chakras need to be open for this to be, you know, congruent and actually really flowing, yeah. So with that, it was just like on the phone, this like moment of realization, and it was like all my, like my crown opened even more, but it was just like this, like a funnel almost, you know, like all the way down to my base chakra. And it was just like this white light just poured in, right? And it was in that sense of like, I was just like, oh, God's in control, not me. Like, you know, and God's not even in control. It was just a realization of the fact that at the end of the day, we can do our best, but whatever ultimately ends up happening is out of our control, right? And the Taurus sphere, is that what it's called? Yeah, it does have a name, thank you. So, you know, it is about, you know, creating your reality, taking responsibility, but learning when to move forward and when to let go, when to, you know, and that's where, you know, oh, connecting to your intuition, connecting to the flow, all of that is that, right? Oh, my dog's just coming to say hello. Say hi. Hi. So, what's going on? Do you need to go outside or something? Yeah, so, you know, and if that's curious for you, Carrie, you could do a clay process around that, that I teach you, like you just did in Module 4, in Trust Intuition. You could do that there. So, yeah, because it's kind of a bit hard to describe, but I guess, you know, as you evolve in consciousness, as you move forward, as you're always, you know, connected and aware of, you know, your shadow parts of stuff going on, you naturally evolve and you naturally have these realizations. When you're ready to move to the next level of your evolution, you will, right? Like, you know, it's like my spiritual awakening is like that really happened. Like, yes, I had to, you know, I hit rock bottom taking drugs, but, you know, like that also, you know, like that happened, you know. It wasn't like, I'm going to have a spiritual awakening now. Maybe my soul did, but, you know, it made my human self wake up. We are all gods. Yeah. And that's what I was kind of getting at or saying was the fact that, you know, can you explain the God wound a bit? And it was almost like that sense of when I said, you know, it was like the funnel opened up and it was just like, you know, straight in. It was, oh yeah, I'm not saying straight away. I'm not like, do it now. No, like, yeah, wait. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And that's why I'm like, just, you know, I was saying to you, resource. You're in resource week, right? So yeah, what I was just saying there. So when you said, Rachel, yeah, like we are all gods, that was the sense. I'm like, how do I describe this? Hey, stop that. That's enough. No, if you're in here, just sit down, please. So my other dogs come down too, and they're wanting to have a playtime. So yeah, when you're saying, you know, like that sense, it was like when I was like, oh, I'm not in control, God's in control. It's not about control, but it was just like the realization of the fact that like we're all connected. It was more of that, like you're saying, we're all gods, right? It was like, you know, that white light, that funnel that kind of came down in my base was like my soul just kind of connecting or something, right? Because when we think about control, it's either coming from fear, like we're in fear, yeah, where we're trying to hold on out of fear. So I wanted my daughter to be protected. I don't want her to have chemicals because it's going to harm her. Like it's a normal protective thing, but it was a bit over much. Like it was too much, right? It was controlling and it was coming from fear. And that is stemming in the base chakra. And it was, you know, the base chakra is fear. You're either in fear in your base chakra and you're trying to control the situation and make it work, or you're in complete trust that everybody is connected to this source. Yeah, so that funnel thing, and it, you know, if you can imagine the source kind of up the top and the funnel kind of coming in, everybody's connected to that. And when you can stay in complete trust of that, right, it helps you to let go. It helps you to hand your child over or whatever situation over, and you do your own internal shadow work, clay work, whatever, you know, you've tools you've got. And I teach all of this in Trust Intuition because I want people to be able to have the tools to grow, which is why Trust Intuition has been bloomed out of my entire life story. And, you know, like when you are worried, or, and this is what I say to you, you know, like when you have a trigger or you get upset about something going on in a relationship, when you do your own shadow work, this connection here that person's connected to too is why, you know, you do your own internal work. Well, that then goes out to them, and so it shifts in them or not, or they leave your life, right? It's like when you can do that internal work, that's when your entire world shifts. So, I don't know, does that make sense? But that just, you know, was kind of what you're saying, explain the God wound. It's like, oh, that we're actually, you know, everybody is connected, right? Everybody has that connection. It just depends whether you trust it or not, right? We either trust it or we don't. We're either connected to that and trust it, or we don't. Okay, I'm just going to put my dogs outside. Are we 2 seconds? If you've got any more questions, please just let me know, because I'm going to... I think that's a big, long life story. I think it's 333, right? I've been on for ages, I think. But if you've got any specific questions about something, please comment them, and I'll just put my dogs outside. Oh, because this is one has come in as well. Wooch. Hey, Wooch. Come on, out we go. You can go outside. All right, so let me know if you've got any questions. Because otherwise I am going to jump off. I've been on here for ages. But at the end of the day, you know, like the journey, yeah, they're part of everything, even my recordings. I'm like, should I have just edited that out? I'm like, oh, whatever's, keeping it real. Yeah, you know, and my Trust Intuition course has been born out of this. There is a lot more to why and how Trust Intuition really came about, because at the end of the day, I didn't trust myself and I was still looking out, you know, my outside resources, anything like that. I'm not giving private readings on this live stream. Sorry, Beth. If you want to book a psychic reading, no worries. The link, I can put the link in for psychic readings, because I'm actually not going to be doing psychic readings for anyone anymore. Simply for the fact that, you know, like if you're in my Trust Intuition course, you know, right? I've created it step by step. You turn up and do those steps that I guide you through, you will have huge shifts in your life, right? You will really shift stuff. The thing that, you know, like when I got the intuition to stop doing psychic readings on Tuesday really strongly, did come, you know, it was like a bit of a shock, but at the same time, like I said, my head was going, but my heart was just like, oh, that feels so amazing to not do psychic readings anymore. Like I said, you know, like when I do one-on-one mentoring, like, I mean, like I've always got my cards here, like I'm constantly pulling cards, right? Whether for myself, whether for other people. It's not that I'm not doing psychic readings anymore on, like, that's the only thing we do in session, because for the fact that, you know, when I do the psychic readings, you know, it is, you know, I record it, I email it to you, and I give you recommendations to do. And, you know, when that, you know, like when that intuition came through, it was a relief, because I'm like, yes, because I'm passionate about people turning up and doing the work. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who's got a psychic reading from me hasn't done the work. What I'm saying is, you know, like, you know, and this is even when I first started stepping into, you know, doing psychic readings, especially online, I was like, I'm not a normal psychic reader. I don't just tell your future. I tell you how you can heal, right? You're very welcome, Teresa. Yeah, it must be time. Hey, the dogs and everything. Hollywood Crescendo. Yes, I'll speak to that, Carrie, in a second for sure about the shadow work and the clay. Just simply for the fact that, you know, like I'm passionate about you guys turning up and doing the work to change your life. If you're not willing to turn up and do the work, I'm kind of really not interested. You know, that might sound a little bit harsh, but it's said with a deep amount of love, right? Those who are in my courses, in my private mentoring, you know, they're really turning up, doing the work and getting extreme exponential results. Those people that come to me for psychic reading after psychic reading, especially the free ones, and just don't like just tell me what's going on, and you know, I'll tell you all this amazing information, like, oh my god, yes. Do you do anything about it? No, not really. And I am saying with this with the deepest respect of love, you know, I've been in that space, I haven't done the work, and then I've turned up to do the work, and then, you know, my life has shifted. And I'm at a point now where I'm really passionate about changing the world. That's one person at a time, and it comes from people doing the inner work. Now, people doing the inner work need support. That is why I give what I give in my courses. That's why, you know, I turn up every fortnight to do, you know, the mentoring support, because I've been through some shit in my story that I've just shared, and so much more that I haven't even shared, right? And the reason that Trust Intuition was born was part of my story that I haven't even shared. So that will be in my book. You know, but it is for the fact that, you know, some people are like, oh, you're hand holding and you shouldn't hand hold. And I'm like, I fucking fell so hard because I didn't have somebody there by my side saying, yes, do it this way, go do this, yes, right? Because this is what I do with my students. I'm like, yes, go and do that. This is in module 4, there's this, or in module 2, there's this, go do that. And they go and do that, and they come back and they go, oh my God, it shifted, it's amazing. I'm like, yes, right? Because I know what it takes to shift, and I'm ready to help those people who are ready to shift. Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, like, you know, I love, you know, and like I said, like I'm happy to take bookings. Well, the guidance was to take bookings for psychic readings until the 31st. And if you have had a psychic reading with me before, you know, I audio record them, I email them out to you, and you'll know that I give you audio meditations to help you heal whatever I pick up in your psychic reading, right? It's very, very clear to me. Whether you guys do the work or not, you know, is you know, it's not that I want to control it, in a sense of like, it takes a lot of energy for me to do a psychic reading. And you know, with my Trust Intuition course, like there's over 100 videos sitting there, like self-paced, you go through, you know, and just, you know, work through that in your own pace, but I am there encouraging you and, you know, supporting you on to do the work. You know, that frees up my energy to be there for a lot more people, because you guys, you know, are doing the work. So the ones that keep kind of coming, especially for the free stuff, I'm like, you know what? You know, anyway, so it just made a lot of sense to do that. So yeah, if you want to book a private reading, like a psychic reading that gets emailed out to you, the link is just in the comments there, Omra. But if you want to book like one-on-one mentoring, send me a private message and I can go through the details about that, because that is, you know, what I'm more focusing on now, supporting, you know, people who are ready to turn up and do the work with that. So I think that is what I love, and what resonates is that your psychic abilities are about transformative healing. Yeah, the work can be intense. Yeah, it can be intense, and I've been there. I've freaking been there, right? And that's why I've created what I've created, so that you guys don't have to go through as much hell as what I did, right? And you've got the support that you need. And the reason I give the support that I do is because I know that's what I needed and I didn't get, yeah? So I've set up my courses so that it does support you as much as possible. Plus then I'm in there, you know, fortnightly giving you that support. Yeah, so Omra, just send me a private message, and yeah, if you want to book either a psychic reading, like in my one-on-one mentoring, I've got a one-off deep dive session. So it's a 90-minute session. You know, it's over Skype or phone, and it's a deep dive, right? We dive deep in 90 minutes. You know what I can do in 5 minutes in a free psychic reading, like, you know, so 90 minutes to clear out some big stuff. And then I've got the 6 weeks one-on-one mentoring package, which is 6 weeks of me holding your hand, because I know what it's like, and you will love me and hate me in this 6 weeks, but I will clear out some shit and you will not be the same person you were, okay? So that 6-week mentoring, you know, like if any of those call you, please send me a message and I will give you the details about that. But yeah, until the 31st of March is the last day that you will be able to book psychic readings with me. I can feel my life, my business shifting in a very big way. I know that this is just the beginning. I don't know I don't know how, you know, I can see what it looks like, and I also know there's something else coming pretty friggin' amazing that I can't yet see. Yeah, just send me a private message, Omar. I'll send you all the details about it. No worries. Okay. Oh yeah. So Carrie, so when you said about, what did you say about doing the shadow work? Yeah, it's important to do the shadow work, right? Because you know how I always say, you know, like cutting cords or, you know, like doing that deep work. If you don't clear out the shadow part that was calling it in the first place, because it's just something trying to get your attention, right? Just like an illness, right? It's trying to wake you up to something. So you can do all this work, you can clear out, you can cut, you know, cords, but if you don't heal the source of what was calling it in the first place, right, to try and wake you up to something, it'll just come back again. Okay, so the true integration, the true evolution to the next level is, yes, clearing out the trauma and the wound, but then what called that in? So doing the shadow work to pull that in as well. I mean, to transform that, otherwise you'll pull it in again, right? If you don't do the shadow work. So, and you know, it's like shadow work and wound clearing, and it sounds all deep and dense, but when you actually do it, it's actually really a lot lighter. But the shadow work was meant to be after the clay wakes you up. Yeah, whether you do it before or after, like personally, I think it's an intuitive thing. If you're called to do the clay first, which is what I recommended for you, I was like, you need to do this first. Now follow it up with the shadow integration. Some people, I'm like, let's do the shadow integration, and then it drops into the wound more. Okay, so again, it's the what's it called? It's the intuitive, right? There's no one way to heal. There's a zillion ways. That's why there's a zillion books. That's why there's a zillion people. That's why there's a zillion modalities. And it's about what's finding the right way and the right one for you, which is exactly what I teach in Trusted Intuition. I'm here giving you tools, resources. Yes, this stuff works. If it doesn't resonate, I want you to go and find what works for you. It might work for you for a bit, and then you come along a new modality and you're like, oh my God. And I'm like, follow that one. Like, I want you to follow what lights up your heart, yeah, because that is your intuition. That is you switched on. That is like you living and following your heart, right? It was like me, like knowing that I just want to drive around the world, right? Drive around the world. I do want to drive around the world. I actually want to fly around the world in my private jet. So, you know, but it is that sense of, you know, like I don't know. I just want to drive around Australia. I don't know what I want to do for work. Don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. You know, and then I had my spiritual awakening, and then I, you know, was doing, oh, I forgot that part. I was doing yoga classes 3 times a week when I was in Brisbane, you know, working in the city. And so before I came home at night, 3 times a week, nothing would stop me doing my 3 classes a week, like Ashtanga, quite strong Ashtanga yoga. It wasn't a full Ashtanga, but it was a Ashtanga teacher, and I loved it. It shifted me that, you know, that 3 times a week for, it was like 18 months solid. Like everyone's like, you want to catch up? And I'm like, yeah, at 8 o'clock after I've been to my yoga, you know, like it was strong. But those, you know, those 3 times a week classes for 18 months solid, like they shifted some stuff too. Yeah, Lauren. So yeah, it is you being over analytical in your head, 100%. Yeah, I sure am, Omra. I 100% am doing my life's work. I know it. I absolutely know it. I actually asked, I'll speak to you in a second, Lauren. I actually asked my Trust Intuition students for some testimonials, because obviously, you know, like it's been, it's been, 18 months now. So it'll be 2 years in November that I first created Trust Intuition. And so, you know, like I just started crying this morning, actually. And yesterday and last night when my students are starting to send me through testimonials, and I'm just like, oh my God, like I know what I taught and what I teach is powerful, but when I actually hear it in response like that, like I see my students shift, and you guys are friggin' amazing. They're on their purpose, you know, like the original trustees as well from the original, you know, opening of Trust Intuition. They're flying high on their purpose right now, like, you know, and they're doing amazing, and it's only unfolding and unfolding and unfolding, and I'm loving watching them bloom and shift, you know, their light out into the world. And, you know, it's like when I've been receiving these, you know, testimonials, it's literally bringing me to tears. Like, they're powerful, right? They're really, really powerful. So thank you all for doing the work, because, you know, like, you guys are the ones doing the work, right? I can just tell you, give you amazing examples of what's helped me, but it's up to you guys to do it. So Yeah, so how can you unblock blockages in your life and your husband's life? So Lauren, it just depends, you know, like, are you willing to do the work? Because, you know, as I was just saying, you know, like my students are getting incredible results and shifting blockages. This is what it is, right? We shift the blockages. So, you know, Trust to Intuition is a self-paced online course. Like I said, I'm in there once a fortnight, giving that group mentoring support. If you're stuck on something, if you need help on something, bring it to the live stream and I help you more in depth, obviously, than what I'm doing right now. But I've got, you know, I created that support because I know that this work is deep, it's heavy, it's uncomfortable, it's new territory for like a lot of people. But the people who are receiving the support from me and actually turning up and doing the work, that's how you shift blockages out. You want to shift onto your life purpose. You want to be more intuitive and actually trust yourself and keep moving forward towards your life purpose. Then, you know, Trust Intuition has, I'll just put a link in the comments now for it. It's, you know, it's over 100 videos. You know, it's fully, like, you get lifetime access. So it's not like, oh, you need to finish them by this date, you know, like, it's like you've got lifetime access. It's up to you to have the discipline to turn up and work through it and actually do it. You know, like, I can guide you as much as possible, but it's still, if you're not actually going to turn up and do what I've recommended you do, then you're not going to shift. So, you know, obviously, you know, if you sign up, Lauren, your husband, you know, you guys can do it together. But also as well, even if your husband doesn't do it, it is that sense that, you know, you can shift and he will shift automatically too, right? And this is the epitome of shadow work. It's the epitome of doing your own work and your reality shifts around you. So, you know, and it's not like, well, I'm going to do my work so he changes. No, it's not like that. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it works both ways. So, yeah, so the link's in the comments there. There is a payment plan. The price does go up tomorrow night. So Sunday night or Saturday night for you guys on the other side of the world. So yeah, so that would be how, Lauren. It just depends how willing you are. So I'm right there giving you that support into, you know, in my group. So Cass says, scroll down for your question. I didn't see it. Where was it? Was it a long time ago? Because, okay. What are my daily success rituals? Ooh, nice question. I like that one. All right. What are my daily success rituals? You will be surprised to realize or hear that they change every single day. Now, as I teach in Trust Intuition, as I teach in my life purpose mentorship, you know, all the tools in Trust Intuition, you can use every single day as a success ritual. Same with life purpose mentorship. You know, everything I teach, this is what I implement, this is what I use. It's not that I do all of those rituals on every single day, because how do you fit that in, right? So as an example, there are 5 things that I am very conscious of that support me in staying connected, in doing my work, in turning up, in doing what I need to do, right? And those 5 things I will make sure I do every day. Or if I'm really busy, I make sure, you know, like some people say, oh, every morning do this, or every night do this, or at 1 o'clock do this. Like, the reality is, like, I'm intuitive. I wake up, I do what I feel like. Now, that doesn't mean like, oh, I don't feel like going to work today, or I don't feel like doing this. Discipline is very different to feeling. Like, you know, like, how do you say that? Discipline gives me freedom. Okay, I know the things that give me energy: going to the gym, exercising, journaling, you know, meditating, you know, yoga. Like, those things fill me up. They sustain me. There's more than 5. There's heaps, actually, right? And I teach this in Trust Intuition. We work out what yours are, right? And, you know, like, and this is what I'm saying, like, there's some days that I am, like, super busy. Like, you know, for example, on Monday, I'm flying to New Zealand and back. I'm not going to have time to do all those things when I have to leave at 2:30 in the morning and I get home at 10 o'clock at night. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's not a reality. However, I know what fills me up. So now I know I have that big day coming up. I'm doing the things I need to do to prepare for that. And then whilst I'm, you know, on the plane, well, I can still do my journaling. I can still do my meditation. I can still do the things that I know that are going to support and sustain me. Now, the other factor is with that is that because I know my list and what supports me and what I need to do, if I know it, but I'm not doing it, I'm going to feel drained, depressed, unhappy even more because I'm not doing those things that I know. So it's not just like, oh, I haven't done those things. It's like, I know and I feel guilty because I haven't done them on purpose. And usually when that happens, there's some sort of sabotage going on, right? And again, I teach all of this in Trust Your Intuition. So, you know, I know it doesn't really specifically answer your question, Cass, but, you know, it is a thing of getting clear about what supports you and, you know, knowing how to implement them in your daily life, you know, and this is why I say to my students, you know, like for meditating, for example, it's like, you know, I could say, right, got to meditate at like 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. every morning. And if you don't do that, well, you're not going to get good intuition, right? How many people in the world can do that every single day, right? Of course, everyone's got a choice and they can choose not to go to work. And like, come on, we live in a real world, right? I keep it real. I want you to implement it. I want you to be in tune. I want you to birth your life purpose. I want you to live the life of your dreams. I get it real. I keep it real and get it manageable so that you can implement these in your daily life, okay? Because I know how busy we are. And then you can start expanding that further. And by actually implementing these things little bit by little bit, it actually creates more time. Your life purpose actually like has to fruition. It actually has to come into purpose and like everything shifts and you're just like, oh my God, this is what I'm doing every day, right? In a sense of like, you know, that example of like you have to do it every morning at 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. or your intuition's not going to work. Like it's a crock of shit, right? The reason I say, for example, and this is just one example that I teach in Trust Intuition, you know, like I say, commit to 10 minutes of meditation. If, you know, if you've never done it before, commit to just 10 minutes and commit to it over the day. So, you know, one morning you might accidentally sleep in or, you know, you're rushing to get the kids off or, you know, like that 10 minutes didn't happen in the morning. So instead of going, oh, you know, like, oh, it's not the morning so I can't do it. And so now you feel bad because you missed it and it's like heavier energy. You're like, oh, I've got the entire day to get my 10 minutes done, just like brushing my teeth or having a shower. I will squeeze it in somewhere in my day, right? It takes the pressure off. And what that also does is it shifts you into your intuitive feeling about what actually feels right for you. And so you're tapping into your intuition, you're tapping into your flow, you're tapping into what's right for you, you're tapping into your next step, and you're tapping into your purpose and your intuition, right? You're connected to your flow. So yeah, my daily success rituals, there's like, you know, heaps of them, but I know what I need to do on a daily basis. I know what I need to do on a weekly basis. I know what I need to do on a monthly basis to keep and sustain me to stay connected to my flow. Does that help, Cass? I've helped you. You've helped me see meditation differently, to see the flow. Yep. To trust your body, spirit, integration, to trust this into your body. Yeah, 100%. It's 100%. Because if we think about the new earth and what we're really moving into and really shifting into, like the new earth, like time doesn't exist. You know, like if we really think about, well, we create our reality. There's no past or present or future. Like, you know, so, you know, like how does intuition, like, you know, fit into a box? Like it doesn't. Intuition and, you know, flow and psychic abilities, all that, it doesn't fit in a box, doesn't have timelines, you know? Now, don't get me wrong when I'm saying like, again, like I said, you know, like just going with the flow all the time. It's like I discipline myself to go to the gym even when I don't feel like it, because that's part of my rituals that I know that keep me on task and on make me feel good, right? If I, you know, I'm like, I don't feel like going, like how many people feel like going to the gym? Like rarely, right? But we know that it makes us feel good, so we do that. That's discipline. And that gives us the freedom to keep going in the direction of our dreams. You never realize how much I didn't trust myself until trusting intuition. I love that. I love that. Love it, love it, love it. So, yeah, doing what fills you up. Yeah, 100%. And that varies depending on what's happened in my last week, in my last month, in my last days. You know, what I know is coming up. You know, it's having that awareness of self and your life. And there was something else I was just going to say to that as well. I can't think what that is. Oh, so don't disregard structure and discipline. Like, you know, as I was saying, you know, like back in, well, it was 2006, like when I started going to yoga 3 times a week, you know, like that was it was a rigid scheme, but at the same time I felt called to do that. So don't disregard your intuition saying, you need to do something structured for a time. Discipline provides freedom. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Did I not say that? Discipline gives me freedom, you know, like turning up to that 3 times a week yoga absolutely changed my life. You know, there is also our soul and our human self thrives on routine. But, you know, when I say that, like I said, don't, you know, disregard that for discipline. You know, discipline and routine, very different. There's a way to get stuck in routine and rigid and, you know, controlling, like you don't have any leeway. Whereas discipline, for example, like I said, turning up to, say, one morning I slept in, but I'll work all day and maybe I'll go to the gym at night time because I know that that fills me up, and in my day there's like 24 hours in a day, so there's kind of no excuses. Okay, you know, all that sort of thing there. Just, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is don't disregard, like, if you feel called to do something structured for a period of time, because it is very beneficial, helps to work through I guess sabotage, but also what's the word I'm looking for? Like it helps you to discipline. Can't think what the thing is. It does break patterns and it helps you face stuff. That's what I'm trying to say. So, you know, like turning up to do something regularly, you know, for a period of time, for however long that is, you know, that you're intuitively called to do so, will help you to, you know, like it helps you to face stuff, basically. It's like the 10-day Vipassana meditation. Like, I've never actually done that, but, you know, people go there and they have to face themselves. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, that's a kind of prime example there. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? Thanks for joining me live. You guys have been here right to the end. Makes you face blocks. Exactly. Like what you just did, right? I'm telling you, I did put some not hard love, what's it called? Like loving boundaries for you to guide you, Carrie. And I'm proud that you did that and listened, because I knew that's what you needed to shift, and you did it. You turned up. All right. So if nobody's got any other questions, I'm going to jump off. We really appreciate you joining me live. And yeah, I can't wait to write my book now, because I'm like, there's so much that I didn't talk about. But, you know, I knew that I wouldn't be able to get to it all. But yeah, Trust Intuition does close, or doesn't close tomorrow night. The price goes up tomorrow night, and it closes next weekend, actually. So there's still time to get in. Yeah, it's self-care. It's basic self-care, that sort of stuff, 100%. So, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, wait till my book. If you think this was vulnerable and open, wait till my book is released. So, yeah, thanks, Omra. Lovely to connect with you here, and everyone else who's joined me live. I know there's more of you watching that didn't comment or say anything, so thank you for joining me live. And yeah, Trust Intuition, price goes up tomorrow night. Link is in the comments, and you'll see it through my like my feed and everything as well. Just send me a message if you've got any questions, and I can direct you in a certain area. Yeah, when you're pregnant, awesome. Yeah, I did my yoga teacher training when Adaya was in my belly, actually. I was 2 workshops into the yoga teacher training when I found out Adaya was in my belly, and she was in my belly for, like, there was a 9 months training, and she was in my belly for 9 months. So yeah, like I said, there's so many bits of my story that I haven't been able to fit in on the live stream. So thank you everybody for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend, the rest of your weekend if you're on this side of the world, and I shall see you very soon. Thanks very much for holding space for my vulnerability as well. Lots of love to you, keeping it real as always. Namaste.